Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and partnered with Vertical Valor Magazine. Thank you to our special sponsor, Airbus, for making this recording possible. In this two-part series of the Hangar Z podcast, hosts Jack Schonely and John Gray welcome LAPD Chief Pilot Kevin Gallagher. The conversation explores Gallagher's journey from his early interest in law enforcement to his current role in air support. Gallagher shares insights about his training, experiences, and challenges of working in air support and the importance of maintaining high standards in police aviation. The discussion also highlights the influence of mentors and the evolution of Gallagher's career within the LAPD. In this conversation, we will discuss the critical skills and experiences that contribute to success in air support roles, particularly focusing on the importance of demeanor, training, and field experience. This conversation delves into the pressing challenges faced by the LAPD, particularly in staffing and recruitment. The discussion highlights the critical role of Air Support Division, emphasizing its necessity in law enforcement operations. Kevin shares his insights on the responsibilities of the chief pilot and the operational dynamics of the air support unit, underscoring the importance of effective leadership and support in addressing recruitment and retention issues. We also discuss his journey as a chief pilot, the redefinition of check pilot roles, the importance of safety and training protocols, collaboration with the fire department, the transition of aircraft fleets, challenges in aircraft replacement, and the evolution of simulator training. We will take a deep dive into the just announced partnership with Loft Dynamics and the acquisition of a new H-125 simulator. Kevin emphasizes the critical nature of training and safety in aviation operations, particularly in law enforcement. He also describes his plan to integrate the Loft simulator into recurrency training, initial training, and most importantly, inadvertent IMC training. Thank you to our sponsors, Airbus, Dallas Avionics, and Onboard Systems Hoist and Winch.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. The Hangar Z podcast is the first and only podcast dedicated to promoting and exploring the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Join your host, John Gray, Jeff Ratkovich, and Jack Schonely.
Still southbound, skidding to a stop. Stand by here. Looks like they're getting ready to bail. Heads up, guys, bailing. Okay, the guy, he's running through the house, jumping the fence, threw the shotgun, threw something out. Grabbing the shotgun. Don't go over that fence. Don't go over that fence. Grab the shotgun again. He is armed. Stay there. Hold your position.
4 on the stop. You're in custody.
Good advising code 4 on the stop.
Welcome to the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts. I'm your host, Jack Schonely. With me today on the hosting side is the creator of the Hangar Z podcast, John Gray. John, how are you?
Hey, Jack. Good to see you again.
Good to see you as always. We've got a good episode, a couple episodes here today. We've been looking forward to this conversation and to talk about a lot of different things. But today's guest is Chief Pilot Kevin Gallagher from the Los Angeles Police Department. And we're going to talk about all things LAPD air support and really spend some time on a new item at air support, the Loft Dynamics H-125 simulator. And Kevin will give us some insight to that. So let me just start by welcoming you, Kevin. We're really thrilled to have you. Welcome to Hangar Z.
Hey, Jack. Hey, John. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate it. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Yeah, this will be fun. This will be fun. I know I'm going to learn new things about somebody I've known a long time, so that's really cool too. And
how long have you guys known each other?
Well, what year did you come to ASD?
Since December of 2020. No,
Yep.
it's December of 2000. Sorry, yeah.
2000.
December of 2000.
So
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
A little bit of time.
Long time. Long time.
That's
We
cool.
did a lot of flying together in both seats. I mean, where Kevin TFO'd when I was flying, and And then we did check rides, and then I did check rides for him, and he did check rides for me. I mean, we've got a long-standing air support relationship.
Yeah, you're actually my TFO trainer.
Yes,
when I showed up. In fact,
that's
when
right.
I showed up, you're on vacation, so they had me with another trainer until you
I
were
came back.
well rested and came back to work, and then then
I was
assigned
ready.
you. Yeah,
I'm going to put you in the hot seat, Kevin. What grade would you give Jack as a trainer?
Oh, he was excellent. Yeah,
All
he was
right.
superb. He was extremely experienced police officer on the streets and a canine officer, and he brought a lot of experience to air support. Working as a TFO, and then they made him the chief TFO, and then they made him a pilot, and instantly made him a TFO training pilot. So, and then later on, he became a check pilot, and he got to work for me as a check pilot, and then he retired, and the division hasn't been the same since.
It's been much better. It improved instantly overnight.
I would disagree with that.
Oh, you're too kind. Too kind. Well, this will be a great conversation. And like I said, there's going to be things that come up that we're not even expecting. We'll go down some rabbit holes, but the way we like to start is find out our guest's background and how they ended up where they're at today. It didn't start with LAPD air support. It started a long time ago back east. So tell us where you grew up, Kevin, where you went to school, all that stuff.
Yeah, this wasn't the plan, but I was born in Providence, Rhode Island, raised in a suburb there, went to high school in Providence, graduated from the University of Rhode Island. During that time, I had an interest in law enforcement, or at least exploring it. So I worked for a local police department as a reserve officer to explore that interest. Also joined the Rhode Island National Guard, attended the United States Air Force Security Police Academy.
I've never heard of that. What is that?
The Security Police Academy for the Air Force? Yeah, so it's basically the military police version of the Air Force. They're called Security Police. Yeah. So I was at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio for basic training and the police academy. Then came back and worked in the Rhode Island National Guard as a security police officer. So that was my attempt to explore what it would be like to be a police officer. It basically that and working for the local police department when I was in college as a paid reserve officer was enough to solidify my interest in law enforcement. But I knew right away that I did not want to work for a small police agency.
Yeah.
So I applied to large metropolitan departments actually throughout the country, as in a lot of them, Miami, New York City, Washington, D.C. And then I actually started in Washington, D.C., entered the Metropolitan Police Academy in 1994. And maybe I should have did a little more research. When I got there, it was pretty dysfunctional, the department and the district. And that was right about the time they were getting ready to re-elect Marion Barry as the mayor.
Yeah.
Right. He was the mayor, the previous mayor. This might have been his third term that he was getting elected to after being picked up on an FBI surveillance using crack with prostitutes in a hotel. They sent him to prison, but he got out and they reelected him. I thought maybe I need to reevaluate this decision. So
I remember that time well.
So I reevaluated that decision and made my way out to the LAPD, and where I began the academy in June of 1995.
Wow, 95.
Yeah.
So let's back up a notch. It sounds to me like you kind of had this law enforcement idea in your head pretty early on. Was there a reason for that? Was there television shows or movies or family, friends? What was the spark that got you in that direction early on?
Yeah, nothing I could say. There wasn't anything in the family history or anything like that. No family members with past law enforcement experience that I'm aware of. Just I'm not really sure what sparked the initial interest. I just thought it was something I wanted to explore. While I was in college, couldn't find anything that I was interested in studying. I think I was a history major. So I wanted to look outside of what the academic world had to offer, and I figured I'd try law enforcement. And that's where I started my interest working with the local police department and then also the National Guard. And that was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I just don't want to do it here.
Yeah. Yep. I understand that. I did similar story, coming from small town and moving to big city for the law enforcement job. And I understand that.
As a young man, had you visited the West Coast or California or LA at all?
No, the first time I was ever out here in Los Angeles was for the testing interview selection process.
Yeah.
They had an accelerated process back then. for people that were from out of town. So it didn't take very long to go through the process and to get an academy start date. It was, I don't want to say weeks, but it was, months, a few months.
Yeah. Yeah. The out-of-state testing was pretty darn efficient.
Yes,
compared to today. I mean, background investigations take forever today. They knocked them out back then. It was like pretty efficient, I think, back then. That was my experience. I think yours.
Yep, I agree. It was quick.
Yeah,
which is what I was looking for.
What was your initial impression of Southern California and then Los Angeles?
Yeah, well, it was a little overwhelming coming here at first. Yeah, I remember landing in the airplane, trying to find my way around for the testing. And, you're driving around and, there's palm trees everywhere, but it doesn't mean it's a nice neighborhood. So it takes a little bit of getting used to trying to figure out where you are and if it's okay to be there.
Let's see if Kevin remembers, because I do. And I bet I got a feeling he will. Do you remember where you stayed? What area of the city you stayed in?
Yes.
For your testing?
Yes. I stayed in Inglewood. At a Best Western.
Wow.
Very close to the airport.
Ignorance is bliss.
That's right.
I stayed in Chinatown on one of them. On my when I came back from my psychological, I stayed in Chinatown, which isn't great. But my first hotel that I stayed at for my initial oral interview and the initial testing, Rampart. I was in the middle of Rampart, not far from MacArthur Park. Ignorance is bliss. I mean, I think back on that and say, wow, that was insane. But I didn't know. You didn't know. I mean, you just show up and you go, what's convenient,
Yeah, there was no internet or no way to just go off of the brochure or whatever they recommend. But that area's changed quite a bit now with the introduction of the SoFi Center and stuff. There's a lot of nice places around there now. I feel much more comfortable staying there now than I did, but I didn't know at the time. So.
On the other hand, where I stayed, it's worse. I mean, crazy. It is funny how you look back on that and go, how did we do that? How did we even find our way to the interview without that phone? Seriously, I think about that all the time. It was an adventure.
I think that was part of the testing process.
I think so too. Let's see if they survive. If they fly in from out of state and they survive to get to Parker Center, we give them 10 bonus points.
Yeah.
Oh, that's great. I knew you'd remember where you stayed.
Of course.
Did you have to come back on a second trip for the psychological, or did they knock it out the first time?
I did. I came back. I took 2 trips.
Yep.
Yeah, two trips.
We called that the $600. This is back in the 80s and 90s. The $600 doctor visit, because you had to take another flight all the way out to sit with a psychologist for 25 minutes or something.
Yeah, right.
And it was dumb, but it was you showed your commitment. That's for sure.
Yeah. He wanted to know if I cried, if I killed a spider.
And you told him what?
I cried for hours.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So you're in Los Angeles. You move here. How much notice did you get from the time that they called you and said, Kevin Gallagher, we'd like to offer you a job? And
yeah, I think it was 6 weeks.
6. Okay.
Yeah, I think it was 6 weeks.
Wow.
I think I got the certification letter, and followed right behind that was the academy start date. It was not a lot of time, but that was fine with me.
It could be worse. Could be 2. And that's what I had. I recall Mike Daly talking about this too. I think his was like a 2-week window too. And I remember getting off the phone and telling my dad, hey, LAPD just offered me a job. Oh, congratulations. I'm so proud of you. I said, oh, thanks, Dad. He goes, when do you start? I said, 2 weeks. I don't know how I'm going to do this. But we made it happen. So then you move your life and your belongings and yourself to Los Angeles.
Put everything I had, a pickup truck with no air conditioning, and moved to California.
Wow. Where was the first place you lived?
I lived in West LA, sort of close to the Westchester Academy right away. That was the first place I lived. I started the academy there in June, and half of the training was done there, and the second half was done in Elysian Park.
Oh, that's right. So we were already at the Manchester Academy. So that was
I think we were
convenient.
one of the first classes to start there. It still wasn't completely renovated. There was a lot of parts of the building were still off limits because it hadn't been renovated yet. But we started there for about 3 months, and the last 4 months were in Elysian Park.
Gotcha. So you graduate from the academy. Walk us through your LAPD timeline, taking you on that adventure until you got to air support.
Graduated the academy December 1995, off to probation at Southwest Division. Right, so spent a year as a probationary officer at Southwest Division, and then you jump on the wheel and they send you wherever. And I was transferred to Newton Division, where I spent the next 3.5 years. Started out at Newton Division in patrol, and then worked in the crash unit, which was the gang unit at the time. Was there for about 2 years, a little more. Then they made me a field training officer, and I worked as a field training officer there for probably almost a year. Right about that time, things were starting to change a little bit on the department. I think it was Chief Parks at the time, and they were starting to look a little bit less favorably at officers who are working hard to make arrests. So, and the objective, the disciplinary system seemed to drift away from something that would have been considered fair and a meaningful system to something that was starting to be easily manipulated by department managers or those who wanted to be managers as a means to demonstrate their loyalty to the organization. And usually that was at the expense of some of the hardworking police officers. So a lot of the supervisors that were mentoring me at the time recommended I get some distance. So I needed to get off the streets to avoid damaging whatever career aspirations I had at the time, which weren't anything other than really just to work the streets. So that's then somebody recommended to me to go up to air support and try alone, and it really wasn't on my radar at all, right? But they said you'd be able to still, go out there and catch bad guys, but you won't have to put your hands on anybody. So I gave it a try. I went up on a ride along, and it was pretty exciting. I got sick, but it was exciting. After the end of the ride along, and back then the flights were only 2 hours, but by the end of the 2 hours, I was feeling it. So anyway, I figured I'd have to work through that. But anyway, I thought this would be a great position, but I thought it'd just be a temporary one. I was hoping things would improve, maybe with a new police chief, and I could go back to working the streets, which is why I moved out here to begin with. So I put in when they were interviewing for TFOs. I got the call that I was selected. And then that was in November of 2000. But I also got the call, and they told me that I'd finished first on the list. But they said, don't worry about it. The holidays are coming up, and we don't do anything during the holiday month. So I said, you got time to prepare. So I was okay. And then 2 days later, I got another call saying that plan has changed. You're coming up in 10 days. So so much for the holiday. So I scrambled to finish my preparation, which was exciting because
your map book.
Yeah, my map book wasn't finished yet, so I had to scramble to finish that. Meanwhile, now that put my tryout, which was a month-long loan tryout evaluation period, right at the same time my son was supposed to be born. So there was a lot going on at the time.
Wow.
So made my way up to air support. Didn't know anybody here. They assigned me a TFO training officer, Rick Alatorre. And they said, your training officer is Jack Schonely, but he's on vacation, so you'll catch up with him in a couple of weeks. So they assigned me with Rick Alatorre. I worked with him for the first 2 weeks. And Jack, you came back, and then I jumped in with you, and somehow I made it through the loan. Yep. And fortunately, my son came late. I was able to complete my loan, and my wife was still pregnant. So that was interesting.
Wow.
The loan, that evaluation, that training, it's the most difficult job in the department by far. It's inherently job as it is, but it's inherently difficult as it is. But really what makes the job really difficult is that the standards are really high, which they should be, right? So the position's extremely demanding, and there are no exceptions for anyone for any reason. So either you can do the job as a TFO or you can't. If you can't find the call, you can't have the job. So, and there are a lot of really excellent police officers that have come through and haven't been able to meet the standard. And it's
some of the best.
Yeah, and it's not on them. It's a very difficult job, especially the navigation part of it.
Yeah.
Right. And knowing where you are in the air is a lot different than when you're on the ground. And if you ever worked in the streets, especially here in LA, where you got east-west streets and north-south streets, and they're all numbered. So, and when you're in that environment and you still don't know which way is north and south, you got no chance in the helicopter.
That's for darn
So,
sure.
there's some people that have an excellent sense of bearing, right? And they're off to a good start up in the helicopter. But if you're that person that just doesn't know which way north, south, east, or west were, and you're working on east, west, north, south streets that are numbered, it's really going to be challenging for you.
That's right. That's right.
Because it gets hard because you can't see the street signs or the numbers anymore, and you got to find your way around, and you got to get to that officer help call, and there's no exceptions. So anyway, that was really challenging.
Yeah, it really is. A couple things that caught my ear there. One was that somebody told you to get distance, and you chose the distance of altitude, which I think is very interesting. I'm not sure he was thinking of that when he talked to you about getting distance from patrol. And did air support and aviation, and they're two different things, really. Come on your radar. I mean, growing up, did you have aviation in your mind at all? And or how did that work?
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, and save lives and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
That's a good question. I had no aspirations to work air support or ever fly professionally, but I did have my single and multi-engine airplane licenses and commercial instrument ratings before I came to air support.
Okay.
So that wasn't the plan. That was something I always wanted to do, and I figured I better get it done before I had kids, because then I'm gonna be broke forever. Which is very. I was correct when I made that assessment. I did get my license because it's something I always wanted to do, and I figured if I don't do it now. So I did that locally here in Southern California before my son was born. So,
wow.
But that wasn't part of the plan to come to air support. I didn't move all across the country. Yeah. And then yeah. So, really, the experience as a TFO was really challenging, and it was, it's satisfying. The high standards really had a positive impact on me, and that would resurface years later. Well, when I became the chief pilot, the impact that those standards had on me and how important it was to keep those standards. And it's really the only division left in the department where they haven't diluted the standards because they can't. We're really fortunate to work in a division where there's still high standards.
You brought up Rick Alatorre, and I had the privilege of working with his son, Derek, at Ontario PD. And I remember Rick coming by our hangar and hanging out and having coffee with us. What a good man that guy is, man.
Yeah.
It was a privilege to meet him and privilege to work with his son. The multi-generational side of that, I think, is really interesting. When you look at, not only was Derek a second generation police officer, but he was also a second generation police aviator, which I think is really neat.
Right. Yeah. Rick Alatorre was great. He was an incredible TFO instructor, and we caught a lot of bad guys, which really helped me through the evaluation period, which helped solidify my opportunities to stay up here. So he was a great instructor.
Yeah.
It was a big loss when he retired.
He probably trained more TFOs in the air than anybody else that at air support, maybe ever. He was in that position a long time. He had an impact on lots of people.
Yeah, when he left, Glenn Plahy took over and did the same. He was excellent too. So we've had some incredible TFO trainers here, which you need to keep the standards high and to keep the mission effectiveness at the level at which it's always been, which has been really good. So
yeah, Rick was a good instructor. He was one of those calm, cool guys. There was no yelling. There was no additional outside nonsense pressure that some instructors feel like they have to do. He never did that. He would just he would push you, but he wouldn't push you in a way that that made you uncomfortable or feel like, oh my gosh, if I don't get this, I'm done kind of thing. No, he was really good at that. He had a good demeanor in the cockpit. And I think that was the majority of his success in that position was because of his demeanor.
Yeah. So the skills needed to succeed at that position need to be learned. Nobody can beat them into you. All right. You need to learn those skills. So you need to be an excellent teacher.
Yep.
And he was. So, he was my first introduction to air support and the standards and the teaching, and it was really positive. And if it wasn't for him getting me off of the right foot in the first 2 weeks, I don't know if I'd be here today.
That's right, because the next 2 weeks was with me. And so Rick is actually the reason that you're where you are today. Because once you were done with Rick, it was downhill from there.
2 weeks is half the evaluation period. If you can't figure it out in 2 weeks, it's really tough to come back in the last 2 weeks. So
as I recall, it wasn't a tough decision to pass you for your month loan, Kevin. I mean, but I will say, as having done that job very early after I became pilot, I was a TFO trainer in the air, and that was the most difficult job that I had at air support by far. It's very challenging, and it isn't for everybody, just like the TFO job isn't. And it was very demanding, but it was fun too, and it was rewarding. But I will say that there's only a handful of people that I can think of where almost instantly on that 1 month loan that they're going to be a keeper. I mean, most people, it takes about a couple weeks, and then you go, oh yeah, they're really getting this. I can think of one person that after the first flight, I mean, I landed and I went, oh, we're keeping this guy. And I'll tell you who it was. He won't like it. Chris Van Horn. Van Horn. We landed that first day, and it was like, oh my gosh, this guy really has it. And don't get me wrong, there were others that within days were like that. Malachi being one. John Malachi definitely. Shipstad was like that. But one day of training, and I just knew this guy had the skills to expand on day one, which was very, very odd.
Yes, I can identify with that because I have the same experiences evaluating pilots now in my position that I'm in now. I do it all the time. Yeah.
Yep. And Chris became a very outstanding TFO and outstanding pilot, and is now a big part of the training cadre, training cadre.
He's one of my check pilots.
Yeah. And he's top notch. I mean, he's just so good. He just has this quiet demeanor, and he is really smart, and you give him a mission and stand clear. That's the kind of person you want doing your check rides and training your initial people for sure.
Exactly.
Wow. It's funny how it transfers. I mean, as a TFO,
it does. Yeah.
And then as a pilot, and then he ends up being a big responsibility spot.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was it. So I was here for 3 years at ASD as a TFO, and we got a new chief of police. Bill Bratton showed up.
Yep.
And things improved, but not to the point where I was ready to return to the streets yet. The coast wasn't clear, as I supervised. When mentors would say, yeah, it's not safe to come back yet. So I'd been here for about 3 years as a TFO, and the division had pilot vacancies. And like I said, I had already had the aviation certificate, so I had met the requirements. I had a commercial instrument rating and single multi-engineer. I had about 300 hours. So I had met the requirements to apply. But I also had a master's degree in Embry-Riddle in aviation safety, which was really unique at the time.
What was the timing of that master's degree, Kevin? When did you do that?
I started before I came to air support, right? So I started out and I needed to get a graduate degree. Right? I thought like a bachelor's degree was starting to be about as valuable as a GED. So I started working in some law enforcement related program. I can't remember what it was, but I thought this is a waste of time. So I didn't really have an interest in anything else, and I was flying at the time. So I said, let me look into an aviation degree, and maybe it'll keep me alive a little longer. Nothing to do with ever trying to do it professionally. So I worked to get a master's degree. I did it in about 18 months, and I think I finished the program, finished all the hard work by the time I got up here on my loan, and actually earned the degree somewhere early in 2001. So
talk about that degree for a second. That 18 months, I mean, I know a little bit about this because we've talked about it, and Rick Lowen was a part of Embry-Riddle, and I know what he did as an instructor for them. Talk about that 18 months and how difficult that was. It's a lot of information, and it's very demanding.
Yeah, it's a lot of work, and I was really in a rush to get it done because I knew as soon as my son was born, everything was going to change. So I was in a hurry to get it done. So I was taking classes. They did have some online versions of it, nothing like they do today, but not a lot. So I was driving to, most of the Embry-Riddle classrooms are on airports, right? So I was at Long Beach, Riverside, Santa Monica, LAX. I was all over the place trying to get classes, as many as I could take at the time. At some point, sometimes I had, 4 or 5 classes at a time. So the workload was really steep, but it was very interesting to me. And turns out it was probably the smartest thing I ever did. Super valuable. It had it really was a big influence when I applied to be a pilot here. I was only here for 3 years, only had 8 years on the job. That's really not the profile of the typical person that's being selected as a pilot here. But, everything I've learned, I've been applying here in this division since I've got here. And it's been extremely valuable in my current position for the last 10 years as a chief pilot. So I did get the master's degree there, and I also got an aviation safety certificate there. And then later years, not recently, I completed another safety certificate just to stay current on it. But that really helped get selected as a pilot, and then years later as the chief pilot.
If you had to pick one thing out of that master's and that benefits you today, where you go, it was all worthwhile because of this, to your current position, what would it be?
Well, so a lot of the coursework was very similar to what you'd see today. Crew resource management is still in existence today, but this is going back, 25 years, 24 years. So we're 4 generations later now. This is way back when it was crew resource management was in the early stages, back when Clay Fouché was the academic hired to work with Northwest Airlines to create this program. United Airlines had their program, it was called CLR. It was all just starting out. So to be able to learn about it that early on and watch it evolve over the years as an aviator to where it is today, where you'll go take classes now in threat and error management, right? So it's evolved quite a bit. Just to see that evolution and apply that in my assignment here has been pretty amazing. So maybe that was probably the highlight of the course, all the crew resource management courses that he took as part of the program.
As I recall, you had Rick Lowen as an instructor for some of your stuff.
Yeah. He taught a course on rotorcraft operations, and I didn't know who he was until I showed up in the class. Yeah, and then I instantly became the target of his class when he found out I was on my way to air support. So but he was a great mentor too, a great professor, and that was an interesting class.
Yeah,
it's crazy to hear you talk
dynamite.
Crazy to hear you talk about how fast you went through that program, because I think most master's programs are designed for 2-year students who are doing that thing full time. And that takes them 2 years.
Yeah, I don't recommend it, but like I said, I wanted to get it done, and like I said, everything was going to change because my wife was pregnant. I was coming up to air support. There's a lot of reasons to hurry up and finish.
Yeah, working a job full time. I'm sure you're working overtime as you're told to as well.
Yeah,
and then also being a student in a highly impacted schedule. That's impressive.
Yeah. Well, like a lot of things like that, it's not supposed to be easy. It's just supposed to be worth it.
Yes.
So, I think in this case, it was well worth it for me.
So now you're at air support. You're a TFO, and you mentioned after a few years you're switching to pilot. Talk about that change. That switch to pilot, switching seats.
Yeah. Well, the plan was to go back to the Newton division and work the streets, but like I said, the coast wasn't clear yet. So I figured let's try as a pilot. I applied. I started flight school in, I think it was the summer of 2004.
Okay.
When we trained here in the Bell 206. So that's where that all started there. I can't remember. I think I completed the training in the summer of 2004. I can't remember the exact dates, but I worked 3 years as a TFO and then became a winged pilot here. I worked as a line pilot for 9 years, working Astro, our air sports regular operations, which are support patrol, did 2 tours in special flight section, which is basically surveillance. Anything outside of Astro, flew on the aerial platform tactics cadre, which used to be called APS, but now it's APT, briefly on that. And then after 9 years as a line pilot, I went through instructor pilot school and worked as an instructor pilot in our flight school for 3 years. Did that for 3 years prior to being selected as a chief pilot, and that was 10 years ago.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
10 years
10
ago.
years ago.
That seems like yesterday. And
coming up on my, I think in about 2 weeks will be my 10-year anniversary in this position here. So, yeah.
Wow.
Going back to your time in patrol, we talk a lot in the podcast about the selection of TFOs and talk about the time that folks spend on the ground in a patrol capacity before they come up to the TFO position. And what I think we've noticed is the longer someone's spent in field operations, the easier it is for them to come to air support and be successful. The difference, I think, with LAPD is your call volume is so high. You get in the three-year period of time. I think if you compare that to other agencies, you're getting, 5, 6, maybe 7 years of experience in that 3-year time period. When you consider that, what's your takeaway on that? Would you agree with that? And then also the second part of that question is, of all the time you spend in the field, was there a really impactful incident that you're a part of that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, so I would agree. I mean, there are some times where you'll go a few months in a summer where you'll get 10 years worth of experience. If you're at another agency, back in the mid '90s and the late '90s, especially working in the gang unit, I mean, it was just chaos. You just kind of contain the chaos. Much different than the way things are happening now, where crime is prevalent all over the place. It used to be contained in neighborhoods, a little more predictable, and now it seems like it's a free-for-all on everybody, which is not good. But it was extremely busy. My time working in Newton Division was wild, to say the least. I mean, it was wild. I don't know of another way to explain it, and a lot of the stuff I don't even want to talk about.
Yeah,
it was crazy. I mean, you see a lot of things that you're never going to tell anybody about. And
sure.
You see some really interesting things that that nobody should see.
Considering you grew up in Rhode Island and moved across the country, and now you find yourself in Newton Division, working gangs, talking to people you probably never ever thought you'd talk to in your life.
No.
What was your experience with that? Dallas Avionics, in conjunction with Technosonic, would like to invite listeners interested in training on Technosonic radios to join us in Kansas City, April 2nd and 3rd at the Embassy Suites, Kansas City International Airport location. If you plan to attend this class, please notify Jim Huddock by email at jhuddock@tfcomm.net. It's jhuddock@tfcomm.net.
Yeah, there was there isn't anything in where I grew up that could have prepared me for what I was about to encounter here. Coming and working in my probation in Southwest and then getting wheeled to Newton Division. No, it was a world away. Very difficult to describe to somebody that hasn't experienced it on their own. You could write a book, but nobody'd believe you unless they work there.
Yes, oh boy, isn't that true?
Yeah, you could write a book about everything you see and everything you see and what happened, but they'd put it in the fiction section unless they actually worked it, right? And
Did you enjoy the gang investigations more than patrol? What did you like in the field?
Yeah, so I mean, I liked it all. I loved working in the gang unit for the 2 years that I did that. I liked working in patrol. I liked it all. It was just great. I mean, every day was an adventure. Very exciting. Definitely a young man's game.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Couldn't do it today, and of course the rules have all changed now, so they wouldn't want me out there now, and I wouldn't last.
No.
It
wouldn't last a week.
No, but but at the time it was very exciting. It was great. It was everything that I'd hoped it would be, and then more. And I wanted to go back and do it again, but it never really returned to the point where you're able to do it the way that we could do it back then. So,
and we're still waiting.
Yeah. Well, I stopped waiting. I stopped checking in. I stopped calling back to see if the when I took the position as a pilot here, I just redirected my focus here, and then started, working to be the best, airborne law enforcement officer I could be, and gave up on ever thinking I was going to go back to the street and we'll just chase bad guys from the sky.
When you made the decision to pursue the TFO position, I know you were kind of told to distance yourself from where you were, but what were some of the things that worked to your advantage as far as being a competitive candidate for that position?
Well, working in the busy divisions that I had to work in, the experience that I had came at an accelerated rate, as opposed to if I worked in some of the other divisions where it takes a little longer to get it. It doesn't take a really long time to get in the vehicle pursuits. I don't know how many that I had, but too many that you want to talk about. That was part of the reason why I had to get some distance. You get into all kinds of tactical situations, and vehicle pursuits, foot pursuits, all the things that you can put to use as a TFO when you get up overhead and you're trying to provide that tactical insight from that airborne perspective. And it's time to direct officers, and you're looking down there and you say, well, that was me, a couple of months ago. And, what it looks like when you're running through the houses, when you're on the ground. So you can apply that perspective when you're in the air, and you can really help guys, catch the bad guy at the same time, stay safe. You don't want anybody get hurt. So, you can learn really fast when you work in these busy divisions, skills that you can use as a tactical flight officer to help them.
I would say, just for our listeners that don't know, that at that time in the 80s and 90s, there were 18 divisions, precincts, stations. They're called different things in different parts of the country, but there was 18, and Kevin was working 2 of them, and those 2 were in, I would say there's 5 out of the 18 at that time that you would consider yeehaw. I mean, where it is really busy. Southwest and Newton are 2 of those 5. And so, like we talked, like you mentioned earlier, John, about a lot of experience in a short time, volume, Southwest and Newton were 2 of those places that provided you with plenty to do. Let's just put it that way. There was tons of gang activity, lots of violence, lots of homicides, lots of foot pursuits, lots of perimeters, searches. So all the things that Kevin ended up doing as a TFO, he had plenty of base knowledge on from his time in Southwest and Newton because of that volume. That volume was a great thing. There's no doubt. Can you expand on that, Kevin, about how that volume, helped you in that left seat?
Yeah. So, you get in that left seat. There's 3 things that really you need to be good at. You need to be good at the police tactics, the radio communications, and the navigation, right? So, and you can get a lot of experience in the tactics and the radio communications from working the street. The navigation's tough. You got to figure that out when you get up in the helicopter, right? That's why they do it as a tryout, right? That's why I don't transfer you in right away, because you won't know whether you can navigate from the air until you get up there and do it, right? So there's a lot of good police officers with good tactical skills, great communications on the radio, and they just can't find their way around, and they're just not going to be able to do it. But if you have that a good sense of direction, like I talked about earlier, so I was fortunate that I have a really good sense of direction and bearing. So I was able to bring that with me too, with the experience that I got from working in those busy divisions. And then I was able to struggle my way through the evaluation and get to the point where they would keep me. And then it takes about 3 years to become effective as a tactical flight officer here, because the job is so demanding. So right about the time I started to feel like I knew what I was doing, I became a pilot. Yeah.
The navigational side of things is so hard. Things look so different from an airborne perspective as compared to the ground. Remember, brand new TFO, I think I was a part-time guy, going up, and I was over top of an intersection that I'd driven through, been on the ground hundreds, if not thousands of times. And we go over the top, and we're spinning over the top, and it didn't look familiar to me. And then I realized where we were. I'm like, holy cow, it blew me away. But, consider where we are in Southern California, and we've got one huge advantage, I think, as TFOs is the geography or the topography of California. We've got those mountain ranges, those big mountain ranges that whether you're flying in the day or at night, even, you can look up and see those mountains and have a sense of what direction you're going or in based on where those mountains are. And you look at some of the areas in the Midwest, there's no mountains to look at, and you're like, well, how do you know which way's what?
while you're orbiting. Yeah,
you're looking for the moon or the North Star or something.
Yeah. Well, we had the Hollywood sign, John. We actually cheated. I mean, if you worked downtown and you were doing tight orbits, all you had to do was out of your peripheral see the Hollywood sign, and it's north of where you're at.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like cheating. But you're right. That topography did help. There's no doubt.
Yeah, it does help, without a doubt. And you need all the help you can get. Because things happen fast, and people expect you to get there and help them, and they don't want any excuses as why you're not there.
Yeah.
And I relied on the air unit quite a bit when I was working the streets. It saved my ass so many times. So it was really important to me to get back out there and do for the guys that needed me the same thing the air unit did for me when I was out there, and I needed them, because when you need them, you need them now.
I remember asking Manny this question, but I'll ask you, how's the adoption of the shot over style camera systems and mapping systems changed not only the TFO's job, but the TFO tryout and training in the beginning?
Yeah, so early on, the Manny doesn't evaluate the TFOs based on that technology because they're required to use the map book, right? So it has changed quite a bit, particularly in the surveillance realm, where when I was a TFO working in the surveillance unit, 2.5 hours on gyro stabilized binoculars, was pretty much your shift. Now they're just sitting there relaxed looking at a screen with a camera, high definition camera. That's changed quite a bit, right? For the better. The rest of the technology on the left side, I don't even really know how it works. I leave that to Manny. I have a chief TFO that handles all the mission equipment and the TFO stuff, and I just take care of the pilot stuff, which is really helpful because it can be overwhelming at times. Sometimes, I got to pull out the manual to turn on some of those radios, and you get away from it. So, yeah, and that stuff can be overwhelming. The mission equipment has really improved over the years, going back from the early moving map system we have now to what we have now with shot over. It's pretty amazing. But from the early on in the TFO process, Manny's not going to let his candidates use that. They will after they get through the loan. They're going to be up there, but until then, you're on the Thomas guide, and you got to do it old school.
And that's important for the listeners to understand, that there is a very high tech map system right at their fingertips that they are not allowed to use for a month, and there's a really good reason for that. Computers lock up, and even the best computers lock up, and Murphy's Law will happen where you're going to the officer down help call, and that locks up. And now you better know how to navigate without that computer. And that's one of the reasons why it's important to still work out of that map book for that first month. And don't get me wrong, the map's there. If they got in a jam and it really was a help call, we allow them to use it.
Well, their TFO training pilot would take over and navigate from the map. But the other reason is sometimes we get to call so quick, you don't have time to type everything into a map. You need to just work out the window and use your map. You need to know and just find it, right? You don't have enough time, because sometimes we're only 15, 20 seconds away from something important, or even less. So
yeah, we just talked about that yesterday. Not just navigation, but when you're coming up with a plan on how to address call. In patrol, a lot of times you have a decent amount of time to come up with a plan because you're driving to that location. In air support, a lot of times you're there now, and you're unseen, and you're having to come up with a plan right now. So it requires a much different level of ability.
Yeah, that's correct.
That map book, we were really, we did all sorts of map drills. Here's one that I love to do with trainees. You'd have them close their eyes, and you'd do a couple of orbits left, right, while their eyes are closed. Hopefully they're not getting sick. And then you'd fly someplace. And then you'd start orbiting, and you would say, open your eyes. Do you see the white van in your view? Yes. Where is it? Tell me where it is. And now they have no idea where they're at. Many times it would be just outside the city limits too that we do this. So now they can't get comfortable. They have that, but they had to use topography. They had to use major intersections. They had to figure out, where am I? Okay. And they'd narrow it down and say, okay, I know I'm in Southeast Los Angeles. Okay. Now where am I? And they had to work backwards from the norm. The norm was, you're taking me to the place. They'd have to tell me where that place was just by seeing it. that taught people how to navigate and how to explain things and how to word things. It was a great drill. It's a great drill.
Yeah. That's tough.
It was tough. We didn't do that to people early on, by the way. That wasn't like a first month type of thing, unless they were really doing phenomenal. That was like during training after that, where you'd say, hey, let's talk about this. You know, I'm going to take you someplace. There's TFOs that still remember some of the streets that I did those drills on, because some of them were some of the best TFOs we've ever had, and they were stumped.
Yeah.
They just couldn't quite get it. That's how hard it was to do. It wasn't an easy thing.
The reverse of that was interesting too. And I was kind of giggle when it would happen. You'd have a patrol officer on the ground working a call, and you'd try and get their location. Like, where are you? And they'd say, I'm right here.
Yeah.
Like, you say I'm right here on the ground, it means anything. So as a TFO, then now you've got to ask a series of questions to efficiently and, quickly try and get you to figure out where this person is. It was tough,
Yeah.
Those are the kind of people that I really love to see come up to air support, because saying I'm right here doesn't mean anything to us. So when they come up and fly with us and you say I'm right here, they really get it, and they understand, okay, let's be a little more descriptive and provide some other details that maybe can help you zero in, so.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah.
And you have to, as a TFO, basically teach the officer on the ground to explain where he is in a way that you can recognize it.
Not easy. It takes a sequence of events and places something that you can see and they can see and all that stuff. It was not easy, and that job is not easy, as we've talked about 1,000 times.
And it hasn't changed.
No,
it's still just as hard.
The one that makes me laugh, we had a call on a golf course. I don't know what the call was, but we had a perimeter set up. So there's a lot of grass and there's a lot of trees. So the officer says, I'm right here. Like, can you give us more information? He's like, well, I'm in the grass. Okay, there's grass everywhere.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, what are you standing next to? I'm by a tree. Okay, there's trees everywhere too. So, like Kevin, like you said, it's coming up with, how do you come up with creative solutions to get that person to say something that makes sense to you? Yeah. And it's daytime, so you can't give me your light. It's it's always a challenge. Those are the fun things, kind of, though, too, as a TFO that makes the challenge interesting.
Yeah, it is.
So let's do an over before we kick into chief pilot duties and some specifics. Let's cover Los Angeles first. Many of our listeners are pretty familiar with it, but population, square miles, LAPD's current numbers. Kind of give us that thumbnail, and then we'll switch to more specifics to air support.
Sure. Yeah, so the population in LA City is approximately 3.8 million. Not sure who's counting, but that's where they get the number. It's the square miles, about 502, 503 square miles. They can break that down to about 468 of land, and they say there's 34 square miles of water. So about 500 square miles. The department right now is really low on personnel. We're probably they're reporting 8,800 sworn officers. I think that might be a little bit of an embellishment, but it wasn't too long ago. We were about 10,000, so we're bleeding badly. And it's the same thing here at Air Support, where we have about 80 total employees, 75 sworn, 5 civilians. The division's run by a commanding officer, the rank of captain. There's supposed to be 10 sergeants, but we only have 5 right now. There's supposed to be 3 lieutenants. We only have 2. And the supervisors, the sergeants and lieutenants, are all pilots. Okay, not the captain, but the pilots are. There's we're supposed to have 36 police officer pilots. We're short a little bit on that too. 37 if you count me. And then there's another 25 tactical flight officers, including the chief tactical flight officer. So we have a lot of vacancies right now, like everywhere else. Very difficult to fill those vacancies, not due to lack of demand, but the department won't let us fill them, because when we take people, we take them from patrol, and they're already hurting for people. So we're running really short-staffed right now. So that adds another interesting challenge to an aviation unit.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Yeah, you can only do so much.
Is your agency, whether it's patrol or in aviation, in a position where they're having to force overtime to fill some of these spots? Whether your mission is saving lives or servicing high-value assets, Onboard Systems Hoist stays ready to assist. Features such as single-point payout, reduce the potential for hoist-induced load swings, enhancing overall safety. For more information, go to hoist-winch.onboardsystems.com.
Yeah, sure. So, they can't run the basic patrol divisions or even our division here. We're so hurt for people. There's overtime. They're staffing vacancies with overtime. There's no other way to do it. There's just not enough manpower. We're short 50% of the supervisors we're supposed to have. You can't make that up without filling on overtime. And the pilot vacancies and TFO vacancies, it's the same thing. Because the mission continues to call, and it continues to expand, and the demand is just growing and growing and growing. So, and they want you to do more with less, but there are some limitations with that, especially when it comes to an aviation unit where you got to keep your eye out for safety all the time. So you can only push things so far. They do have to fill on overtime. There is no way around it, and then that's a whole nother dynamic. We have to manage fatigue and turnaround time and make sure guys aren't working too long, and we have some limits on flight time and flight hours. So that just adds another dynamic to it when we're short.
I just read a post this morning from Betsy Bratner Smith that the city of Baltimore, at any one moment in Baltimore, 25% of the officers on duty are on mandatory overtime. Wow. And they've been doing it for a long time. And the word she used is unsustainable, because it is. You're gonna burn people out. They're not going to get the time off where they can decompress. They're going to pay for that. And everybody in law enforcement is in this position, but that was a big number. I was really surprised, 25%. That's going to result in a lot of bad things, and some as extreme as the mental health side and suicides. I can say that without blinking, that's going to be one of the results. It's terrible where we're at. And it just breaks my heart that LA's in the same boat, but they sure are. I mean, it wasn't long ago, Kevin, that every mayor wanted to be the one to get to 10,000, and we came really close. We're like 9,900, and now we're talking 88, which is probably really 85. I don't know how things are getting done. It's insane.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Very interesting.
You talk about the mental health side of things as it pertains to the job when you're dealing with forced overtime. That's an interesting point, because you think about family dynamics, and you actually have to be present to be a father and a husband and all the things that make your family, right? So if you're not present, that starts setting in there. And then Kevin, you brought up fatigue, and you think about the safety, whether you're in patrol or in aviation, there's so many factors that play into that fatigue issue. Imagine getting into a shooting after being on duty for 22 hours and all the issues that come with something like that. It's a bad recipe, and I'm hoping that we can find some solutions here quick to deal with the recruitment issue that we're dealing with. And I know, unfortunately, it doesn't seem like it's going to be a quick thing. It seems like it's going to be a long process, but
no, you can lose your numbers real quickly, but it always takes a lot longer to get them back, especially for the reasons that we're losing them, over the years here. It's for all the wrong reasons. So it's tough to recover from that, and it's not going to happen quickly. So everybody's going to need to the managers are going to need to really pay attention.
Yeah. I just saw recently, I think you and I actually talked about this, Kevin, that an academy class graduated in LA, and there were 24 people, I believe. 24.
Yeah.
And I mentioned it to somebody at command staff, and their reply was, we were lucky to get the 24. And I went, wow. I mean, because the norm is 60, and there were times in LAPD history where it was 60, 80, even 100, but 60 was pretty.
Yeah, I had 104.
Did you really?
I had 104 at the start of my class.
Wow.
We finished with like 96, I think. But yeah.
Wow.
And that was pretty common for all the classes in 95. They're all about the same size. Yeah. Now we don't even get that in a year.
Nope. It's incredible where we're at. But
yeah.
Kevin, from your perspective, sorry, Jack, last thing on recruitment. Any thoughts or opinions from you on how law enforcement can be more effective in recruiting candidates to these positions?
Well, the primary driver for a lot of organizations is family that have been on the job. And, I can say for the LAPD, there are not a lot of LAPD officers over the last 4 years that have been recommended that their family come on the job. because the conditions are just not favorable enough. So I could never recommend that to any of my friends or family right now, because it is just not a good place right now. And there's too many pressures and coming from outside of the police department that add to that got us into this position. But, until they can fix that, they're going to struggle to recruit, because if the people that are on the job aren't going to recommend it, why would anybody come on the job? Right.
That's right.
We have a new chief now, and he's an excellent candidate. And I really hope that he's allowed to do what he needs to do to get this place turned around. If anybody can do it, he can. But
yes,
recruiting,
I agree with you 100% on that.
Yeah, and then the other problem is the retention. People leave, and then there's another dynamic too. They're particularly here at Air Support. People are on the deferred retirement option plan on drop, so they have the dates when they have to leave. And probably over the past few years here, and even going into the future, looking to the next few years, we're losing guys. We lose a lot of guys in February. That's usually an ideal time to go on drop, but about 50% of them would stay if they could. And that's interesting, because we have a department that's bleeding bodies. They need people, especially the most experienced people, and they want to stay, but they can't. Yeah. And the department's not doing anything about that. So it's, shame on them for losing their best people at a time when they can't afford to lose anybody. And they want to stay. They're having a hard enough time trying to keep people to stay. And then you have the people that want to stay, and they're kicking them out.
It's insanity.
It makes no sense. So they're not going to get it. They're not going to fix this, because they're not even trying to keep people that want to stay.
You talk about Jim McDonald, and I had a chance to talk with him, and what an amazing man, great leader. I think, like you said, if there's somebody who can make an impact within your organization, he's probably one of the few, I think, that's in a position to affect change and improve the morale of the overall organization. That's exciting, and hopefully that works out.
I agree. Yeah. I wish him the best. He's an excellent person and a great leader. I just know that he's been gone for a while. He comes back, and I can imagine he's just looking around going, this doesn't look anything like this place was when I left.
No, that's exactly what he thinks.
Right. So he's probably, once he recovers from that, and, he'll come up with a strategy, and I'm sure he'll be successful. It's going to take some time, and none of this is going to happen quick. But he's definitely the right man for the job. Yeah. And, here at Air Support, he'll get 100% of our support, whatever he needs from us.
Yep. He's a special man. He's got three big fans right here, but, Kevin and I know him very, very well, and he gets things done. He's a great leader, and he's just a great person. I mean, he cares. He truly cares. He's very genuine, and many chiefs aren't. And he is. And if it can get fixed, he'll fix it. But it's going to take him time. No doubt about it. And I've actually talked to him about this topic, and of recruitment and retention. And one of the things, he knew that we talked to a lot of people about this topic. And he said, what's the pulse that you're getting from the other people? And I said, it's very simple. Many leaders and mayors and city councils think it's about money. And they couldn't be further from the truth. Money is down the list. People want to come onto a police department in a city where they're going to get support from the mayor, the city council, the chief, and the district attorney. If they have those four things, things are going to go very well. You don't have to give them a $20,000 bonus to sign up. They're going to sign up. But if you have, 3 out of 4 of those things aren't there, they're going to go someplace else. Even if you're offering more money, they're going to go someplace else. It's not about money. It's about support. And he knows that. I mean, he knows that, and he's going to do everything he can. I know, but
hiring bonuses should be a big red flag for anybody that's looking to come on a police department.
You better believe it.
Right. So if they need to throw a bonus out there, there's problems within that organization. Right.
And we could name the cities that have the big ones, and you'd go, I would never, as a experienced cops, we would go, well, I'd never work there. You could you could triple that, and I wouldn't work there because of the things I just said. There's no support there. There's no fighting crime going on. There's fighting the police. It's insane. But the problem is that everybody will figure this out, but for some, it's going to be too late. And they'll never get the police department back to the numbers that they want. And I just hope that Los Angeles hasn't crossed that line. I know they're close to it, crossing that line where it's beyond repair. But this Jim McDonald and Gascon being gone are two big steps in the right direction. No doubt about that.
Yeah, if you fix your retention problem, the recruiting problem will work its way out.
Agreed.
The approach is, I think they're trying to fix the recruiting problem, but you can't fix that unless you fix the retention problem.
That's right.
Right.
That's right. Well, now that we've solved the entire recruiting retention problem for the Los Angeles Police Department, we can go back to air support here. And tell us about the fleet. You talked about number of personnel. Talk about the fleet, mission profile, hours flown per year, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so we have 18 aircraft, 17 helicopters, one airplane, right? 16 of the helicopters would be our primary mission helicopter, the A-Stars, right? 6 of them are AS350B2s, and the 10 newer ones are the H125s or the AS350B3Es, right? Primary mission helicopter. We have one special operations helicopter. That's our medium lift Bell 412. And then we have a King Air 200, which is an old Army C-12C that we got an airworthiness certificate for working through the FAA, and now it's certified as a King Air 200. So that's our fleet, and our mission profile is very interesting. Probably unlike a lot of other agencies, when you walk in the doors here, you'll see the plaque on the wall. It says the mission is the same, only the vehicle has changed. And this department treats that helicopter like it's a patrol car in the sky. Yeah, so far as they went to paint it to look exactly like it. So it's black and white, just like the patrol cars. It has the same markings on it, and it is treated exactly like that. And the crew inside is selected, and a big part of how they got here was because they were really good at working in a black and white on the street. So it is truly a patrol car in the sky. That's where it all starts. And that concept is very difficult for people to absorb. I don't know if there's any other agencies that do that, but it's very interesting when people are trying to figure out what helicopters are doing up there. They just don't get it, right? So we have different sections within the organization. The primary section is called ASTRO, which stands for Air Support to Regular Operations. That's patrol, right? And that is why we're here. 20 hours out of each day, 2 aircraft are up on patrol. We have 24-hour coverage. There is a window in the morning where the watch commander will manage based on fatigue and call load, where they'll keep the later shift over and continue flying, and the early shift they'll start flying before their regularly scheduled flight. So we have 24-hour coverage, but you're going to get a minimum of 2 helicopters in the air 20 hours a day, every day, and that's to support our patrol guys on the ground. So we have another section called Special Flights, which handles primary surveillance, photo flights, warrant services, anything outside the normal patrol flight. So we don't take an Astro patrol flight away from its duty, supporting the guys on the ground to handle other things like surveillance and photos and warrants. So we have a special section just assigned to that. It's got its own supervisor and crews during the days and the PM watch hours. And we have a training section, right? We have our own flight school here, 11-month long. Everybody has to go through it, no matter how much or how little experience you have. And we also have our own recurrent training program and then other specialized training programs, instructor pilot school, functional check pilot school, NVG, emergency flight training, you name it. Everything that we do here is taught here. There's a special operations section that has 4 different cadres. The first one being the aerial platform tactics, where we use the Tyler Special Operations benches and work with the SWAT team and their snipers. And that platform serves really as an immediate interdiction measure when responding to extreme deadly threats where the danger to the public and the officers exceeds the department's regular capacity to address it. So it's not deployed very often, but it has been deployed and used. And it's one of those tactics that it's better to have and not need than to need and not have.
Yeah,
which is a lot of what happens at a large metropolitan police department. You got to have the capabilities to do things that you hope you never use, rather than have to use them and you don't have them. You wish you did. The second part of the special operations category is the medium lift category, the Bell 412. That's primary to support the special operations units, particularly SWAT. They're the primary user of it. K9, occasionally the bomb squad, but That's primarily it's flown with a crew of 2 pilots and a crew chief. Currently, of all the pilots here in the division, they all fly the A-Star in the patrol mission, but 7 of them are trained up to fly the 412. And there's 6 crew chiefs that the chief TFO selects and trains. The chief TFO is one of them. The primary support of the SWAT team for tactical insertions into active police incidents. We do overwater insertions of the dive unit and the SWAT's tactical waterborne unit. We can transport bomb squad, the technicians and equipment around. We can deploy canine handlers and their dogs. It can be used for extraction from police incidents. We do the chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear, and explosive threats, radiation detection from the 412. We provide short-range transportation flights. It's an IMC-equipped aircraft. We do fly at IFR. Some of those short-range trips are transportations of prisoners. Right, so we do prisoner transports, but we will only do them in an aircraft that has a separate cockpit from the crew cabin. So that leaves us with the 412 because it's separated in the back, and also the King Air. So we won't transport prisoners in the A-Star. Also, it's totally NVG capable, so it's performs all these missions day or night.
For the 412, is that something that's staffed ready for a special mission, or is it something to where you get a request and you downstaff a patrol ship? Or what does that look like? Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Hangar Z podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message after a word from our sponsors. Cheers. Dallas Avionics, in conjunction with Technosonic, would like to invite listeners interested in training on Technosonic radios to join us in Kansas City April 2nd and 3rd at the Embassy Suites Kansas City International Airport location. If you plan to attend this class, please notify Jim Huddock by email at jhuddock@tfcomm.net. It's jhuddock@tfcomm.net. Whether your mission is saving lives or servicing high-value assets, Onboard Systems Hoist stays ready to assist. Features such as single-point payout reduce the potential for hoist-induced load swings, enhancing overall safety. For more information, go to hoist-winch.onboardsystems.com.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, and save lives and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
Thank you for joining us for these episodes of the Hangar Z podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and partnered with Vertical Valor Magazine. We hope you enjoyed our in-depth conversation with LAPD's chief pilot, Kevin Gallagher. Kevin's a true aviator, and as chief pilot, he has taken that unit to a whole new level of professionalism through innovative thinking, training, and technology. The recent addition of the Loft Dynamics H125 simulator will provide his air crews with incredible training opportunities that will certainly enhance safety. This quote from Kevin's very impactful for me personally, and I hope it was for you too. Training mitigates risk. For training to be effective, it must be realistic and offered frequently. Take that quote and run with it with your units around the world. It's a good place to start. Be sure to check out Loft Dynamics Simulator at Verticon in Dallas and at APSCON in Phoenix this July. You can learn more about the Loft Dynamics LAPD partnership in an article that's going to be in the Vertical Valor mega issue, which is both in print and online at verticalmag.com. That goes live on March 10th. Hope to see you all at Verticon. Stop by the Vertical Magazine booth, 5712, right across from Pratt & Whitney. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. See you soon on the Hangar Z podcast.